What's up, beautiful person behind the screen? Thanks for joining me again. Halo 3 offers one of the best gaming experiences to date and holds many secrets, Easter eggs, and quirks. There's some things that I missed and some things that I wanted to elaborate on. For starters, if you watched the first video and you're returning for the second, bless you. Thank you so much. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which is not something I ever expected. I started this channel out of spite, to shout at the void, hoping that the void would give me purpose and shout back. I was full of this spiteful rage after being disappointed game after game, year after year, and I longed for the glory days again. I feel that most of the creative energy has been sapped from games. These projects are not made from passion anymore, from the blood, sweat, and tears of people that truly love games and love creating them for the sake of creating them. Now it's just a bunch of suits in a boardroom seeing how they can make the most money with the least effort. That's why I needed to take a step back. My mental health was tanking and I was in a weird place. The Borderlands 3 video especially was my outlet for some real-life issues I was struggling to overcome. Games were always an escape from these issues, and Borderlands 3 was the straw that broke the camel's back. I had been putting up with the loot box era of games, everything needing a battle royale because of Fortnite itself, politics getting shoehorned into major franchises, and EA making every step in progression a microtransaction. And on top of all of that, I had been dealing with a toxic breakup that kept resurfacing all throughout the summer and fall. I took shrooms and saw the universe, and then the next week my dog died, who I had raised from a puppy. Borderlands 3 was going to be hours upon hours of strolling through Pandora and taking a break from the mental stress that comes with major life events like those, and it goes without saying that my escapism fantasy lasted about 5 minutes instead of a couple hundred hours.
There will be a great deal of hardship on the road ahead.
So like I said, I needed to step back. And so I went back to Halo and remembered what it was like to be a kid again, when games were passion projects and teams of developers came together to create something beautiful. Sure, money was a motivator, but I'd like to think that the real motivation for most of these creators was making something new, unique, boundary-breaking, timeless, and special. Something that would become their legacy and touch the lives of many. So that is why we are back today, because Halo 3 had so much passion and love that even after an hour of covering everything I could remember and doing hours of research, there is still more passion, still more love and care deep beneath the surface that you can only see if you went digging deep, or in this case, diving deep.
Kick the door.
These first few items on the list are going to be the things I got the most comments about, some corrections if you will, and I would also like to apologize for the video not being absolutely perfect. I'm only human, and not only did I miss some things, but I made a couple of errors and fucked up the whole tone of the video. So I'm going to immediately correct those mistakes and move on to some new stuff, and not try to force any sort of tone or deeper narrative with this video. Something I failed to accurately depict in the original video were the Green Phantoms. I erroneously said that they only appeared in cutscenes and during the Covenant, but they are in Floodgate too. I actually had footage in the first video showing the Green Phantoms on Floodgate and forgot to include it in the script. The two most unique Green Phantoms are on the Covenant at the third tower, which is where my primary fascination lies. These phantoms only spawn if you destroy the AA wraiths outside the tower, which the game does not prompt you or force you to do. I imagine many players kill these wraiths out of impulse. You destroy a handful on the Storm, the Ark, and now the Covenant. If you see an AA wraith, you blow it up. That's just what you do. But you can skip them, and these phantoms won't spawn and drop you reinforcements. The fact that these phantoms are triggered to spawn specifically after each AA wraith is destroyed, and the fact that the game does not prompt you to do so, makes them the most unique of an already unique vehicle. Literally a month after the original Iceberg video came out, Rocket Sloth paired up with Marty O'Donnell, the composer for the Halo games, and confirmed that the IWH BYD skull is actually a music-based Easter egg. All of the Halo rings play a tone in the final Citadel, and you have to jump through them in order of the first 7 notes of the Halo main theme song. So after 13 years, we finally figured out and got that confirmed by the composer himself, which is awesome. I brought up the red versus blue Easter egg, but there are also lines of dialogue in-game that change based on what difficulty you're playing on. At the end of Arrival, Johnson's dialogue changes based on difficulty. Typically he says, "Then they must love the smell of green." But on Legendary, he has multiple line variations, including a line of him doing a little product placement. Take a listen.
Then they must love the smell of green. Then they must love the smell of hero. Then they must love the smell of badass. Then they must love the smell of badass. And I left a little present for you, Arbiter, and I'm walking away. Ha ha ha! Then they must love the scent of testosterone. And they must love the scent of a real man. They must love the smell of Bulgari. Yeah, I'm doing a little product placement. I gotta get paid too.
Something interesting I didn't mention is that if the Arbiter is enraged, draws his energy sword, then dies, you can pick it up. It only has 1 swing's worth most of the time, but I'm sure there's a way to manipulate a full energy sword. Maybe by picking up the sword, enraging him, and getting him killed again. It probably works similarly to the infinite ammo Spartan laser you can get from Johnson on Halo, but the main focus here is that on any level with the Arbiter present, you can get an energy sword, and that's dope. I always found it a little ridiculous that Spartans can survive falling from space but can't swim or die to fall damage. It makes sense in-game, as if you were able to fall off mountains and survive, you'd basically be an unstoppable superhero and a lot of the natural tension regarding mortality would be lost. However, what the player isn't explicitly told is that Spartan's armor is airtight and has an oxygen capacity of 15 minutes. So Chief can survive in space with no air for up to 15 minutes, and same goes for underwater. This isn't a purposeful inclusion, but for one section on Sierra 117, Chief can be fully submerged underwater and survive. Just a little oversight by the devs. They probably forgot to add a kill barrier here. In the final room of the Ark, there's a chieftain kneeling down. He rises when you approach and is being cheered on by other brutes. If you approach the chieftain and don't attack those other jump pack brutes, they will watch as you duel and then go into a rage and attack you after you win. Honestly, I think it would have been cool if the jump pack brutes respected your victory and just flew away. It doesn't make sense given their nature, that's more of an elite thing to do, but it still would have been cool. Hidden in some piles of garbage scattered throughout the storm and on the multiplayer map High Ground, there's a box of Chinese takeout. This is in reference to the sheer amount of Chinese food consumed by the Bungie dev team while Halo 3 was being developed. The team also loved pizza and, for some strange reason, bananas. The statistic I found, according to Yahoo, is that the team consumed 2,000 pounds of pizza, a half a ton of bananas, and 24,000 gallons of soda. So if you are what you eat, then the Bungie dev team is like 30% pizza, 30% Chinese food, 25% soda, and 15% bananas. But since we live in the real world, they're made up of 100% legends. At the double scarab fight at the end of the Covenant, players can fly a Hornet to a certain spot on the tower that Truth is in, the Citadel. If the player lands or drops off a teammate, they can walk up a thin ledge and balance beam their way into a corner. In the left corner, the Siege of Madrigal starts to play, which is a classic track from past Halo games. In the right corner, a conversation voiced by Microsoft Sam will start to play. Here's the audio from Microsoft Sam.
JNC Paul, Quirks so totally fired. I am a monument to all Marty's sins. LOLOLOLO. OMG, this game needs more guitar wank. Am I right? Happy Easter, Marty.
You know that massive Covenant cruiser that you can see outside the hangar on Crow's Nest? It's only half a cruiser. There's no other half, as there's no normal way for the player to get that far outside the map to see it. The Banshees and Hornets are also low polygon renders of the vehicles, and the Banshee is missing its cockpit. Lastly, there's a lone Pelican far below the hangar area. It never moves, and why it's down there is anyone's guess. Probably just overlooked by the developers, or needs to be there so the rest of the game doesn't fall apart. Coding is weird, man. Brief but interesting, on Crow's Nest there is a half-obscured poster depicting someone looking for their missing cat, Jonesy. This originated in Halo CE, as there's a bulletin board on the Pillar of Autumn with a poster saying, "Missing cat answers to Jonesy." In multiplayer game modes with a bomb present, if you pick up and drop the bomb, you can see a message written on the bottom. In Halo 3, the messages are either "hold on to your butt" or "thus I refute thee." Halo Reach has a third, showing a Spartan helmet, a heart, and XOXO. And Halo 2 has 4, the 3 that I mentioned, plus one that reads, "Kiss it goodbye." There's a Canadian coin buried beneath the ice on the multiplayer map Snowbound. You can view it with a sniper rifle if you care about Canada. I don't, because, well, it's Canada. On High Ground and Crow's Nest, there's some computer terminals that will play various Halo songs after some time has passed. Simply stand near the computers on Crow's Nest and wait, eventually it will play the main Halo theme. On High Ground, there's a radio in the control room that makes Morse code bleeps. After a while, it will play a Halo track. You can even pick up the radio with the Forge drone, and it will play the music wherever you place it.
And here it goes.
There were plenty of other custom games I missed that originated in Halo 3, and I'd like to briefly go over a handful more that I rediscovered while researching for this video. Starting with Jenga Night, this map is great. The non-infected players spawn balancing on a tower made of collapsible blocks, like cement barricades and boxes. Their goal is to survive the toppling of the tower by the infected player, who pushes debris into man cannons in order to collapse the tower. I didn't play this one much, but it's iconic and definitely worth including. Drive or Die is a bit more jank than Jenga Night, but it is a ton of fun. The infected player's speed is maxed out, allowing them to glide across Sand Trap in a matter of seconds. Non-infected players have to resort to vehicles in order to escape the incoming threats. Utilize teamwork and a pack mentality to survive, but you are more than likely to fall to the 1,000-mile-per-hour zombies. Much fun was had. I really enjoyed being the infected, as you can really play with Halo's momentum and get the jump on unsuspecting players. My main strategy back in the day was to hide out in the tall dunes and then rush down the sand wall to intercept and ambush the vehicles. Being a non-infected is nice too, as there's a lot of tension as you slowly get overrun, and the feeling of literally driving for your life. Tetris is an interesting one, to be sure. The non-infected players spawn at the bottom of a rectangular pit and have to dodge debris being dropped by the infected player above. Avoid being splattered and climb out of the pit using the new tower of debris to escape and kill the infected. It's very tough to win as a non-infected player, but the enjoyment really comes from watching your friends get pancaked by massive falling blocks. Many laughs were had. And the last dive into custom games nostalgia is Hobo Towers, a game where the infected player spawns on a crate and is armed with a Spartan laser. Above them are many floating pallets with non-infected players balancing on them. Shoot out the pallets to sink the players, drop off the pallets, and push the infected player off their box to win the round. Never really played this one either, but the gameplay looks tense and hilarious. I hate to make this comparison, but it reminds me of one of the stages in Fall Guys. You know that game that people raved about for like a month and then it fell off the face of the earth? Yeah, that one. In a year, no one's going to understand that reference, but whatever, moving on. I briefly mentioned this in the previous video. Since the Ark and the Covenant are such long levels and incredibly large maps, they are loaded in sections. If you find a way to break out of bounds, travel far enough back to the beginning of the level, and manipulate some loading zones, weird stuff will happen. On Sierra 117, you can manipulate a phantom into flying onto the map and then use that to break out of bounds. You can traverse outside the map to the final area of the level, where all of the enemies will be inactive. You can kill them, but they will not react to you in any way. On the Ark, you can break out of bounds during the Scarab fight and hit a loading trigger that will destroy the Scarab and progress the mission. You can also climb your way all the way back to the beginning area of the mission. There are a couple of time travel glitches on the Covenant. The one that I covered pertained to viewing the Secret Elite, which is the pilot of the Phantom that drops off the Arbiter after the double Scarab fight. Dead brutes will also rain from the heavens, and the game will assume that you have defeated the Scarabs. However, there's another interesting time travel glitch that allows you to abuse loading zones and get into Truth Citadel early. From here you can explore the interior of the Citadel and get to the firing platform without triggering the Death of Truth cutscene. You cannot progress the level unless you go all the way back to the elevator shaft to trigger the cutscene and load all of the enemies for the next section. According to General Kid, if you do this glitch and backpedal into the cutscene, despite the cutscene showing that the Flood will be temporary allies to stop Truth, they are still hostile to you. It makes me wonder what specific triggers are required for the Flood to be marked as allies during this section of the game. And lastly, using the time travel glitch, players can break multiple levels and get into locations that were never supposed to be accessible, which leads me into the next cool discovery. There are a handful of secret rooms in Halo 3. 2 are only accessible via theater mode cheese, the third being accessible and explorable by the player via the time travel glitch. On the Covenant, not only can players get into the second tower and explore the entry room, but they can also glitch into a secret room in the third tower. There's a large empty space with what looks like a generator in it. People speculate that this is the power supply for the elevator, but its true purpose is unknown. The other 2 secret rooms are also parts of the cutscenes from Halo 3. Some games have what is called pre-rendered cutscenes, which means that the cutscene is basically a video file that is triggered to play once a player reaches a certain point. That is not the case with Halo 3. All cutscenes are rendered by the game's engine using the game's resources and assets, so unique areas like this secret interior room are actually parts of a cutscene that the player was never meant to see in-game, in-map, outside of that cutscene. In Floodgate and the Ark, players can use theater mode's pan camera and pan camera coordinates functions to get into and view this room. It is the same room that appears on both levels and depicts the interior of the Shadow of Intent, that massive elite cruiser helmed by the shipmaster. There are multiple sections throughout Halo 3 where you can pass up the triggers that tell the game to spawn enemies. Some notable despawns are right at the beginning of Sierra 117. By hopping out of bounds, you can jump over the trigger that spawns all of the enemies in that area. The only resistance you will face are 3 grunts and the brute that is standing on the rock overlooking the area. During the arc, you can do multiple wall rides with a ghost to skip the triggers that spawn some ghosts and a big fight right before the area with the 2 AA wraiths. You've got to clear out that whole valley so that the Forward Unto Dawn can come and land. On the Storm, you can skip the Scarab fight by forcing a mongoose through this doorway by building momentum and jumping off the goose and letting it slide through the door. There's a barrier that prevents vehicles from passing through this doorway, but only if a player is physically on the vehicle. From there, you can clip through a door by abusing the dismount animation of the mongoose, thus skipping the entire Scarab fight. In the speedrun, you can hear audio triggers regarding the Scarab, while Chief and the Arbiter are already destroying the massive AA cannon at the end of the level. There's a similar scenario regarding barriers close to the end of the Covenant. You can force a Warthog through the door at the end of the light bridge, then drive down the hallway, skipping a Cortana moment. You can also clip through a door in Halo Reach by abusing the forklift's dismount. Speaking of skipping Cortana moments, there are a handful of them that you can outright skip. During Sierra 117, you can use a brute shot jump to jump over the Cortana moment in the cave. At the end of Floodgate, you can skip the final Gravemind moment by doing a slide jump combined with a hammer launch to reach the button for the end of the level, effectively cutting off Gravemind. There's also a deployable cover clip that can bump you into the final room, skipping all of those Gravemind moments. Like I mentioned, you can drive a Warthog into the long hallway after the light bridge and double Scarab fight. You hit the cutscene trigger during the Cortana moment. If you skip the cutscene, the new section will overlap with the Cortana moment, causing weird effects like a darkened screen and Cortana's face popping up a couple times. Spooky. Cortana is a great mission, but its runtime is padded with some 11 Cortana and Gravemind slowdowns. There are a couple of sections where these moments happen back to back, and thanks to hammer launching and slide jumping, players can enter into a Cortana moment while Gravemind is talking and cancel the Cortana moment. On the Storm, you can also skip a Cortana moment in a building by jumping on a gun container, throwing a grenade by the container, tipping it over, and using that momentum to slide off of the container and out of the room. Thanks, Xbox Console Companion. Skipping the Cortana moment. At the end of Floodgate, it is possible to use a deployable cover to clip through a wall right before you drop into the crashed flood ship. This trick is pixel perfect, but skips you into the final room of the level, saving significant time and skipping a handful of Gravemind moments. You can also clip through the door into the Citadel at the end of the Covenant and skip the
Too scary!
I wrote out this whole piece about how I was going to be under OP's bed tonight because he was a sick fuck and made up an Easter egg because he has a weird fetish for Miranda Keys, and managed to get it posted to Halopedia. It depicts a very strange texture on Miranda Keys' outfit, an arrow pointing to her crotch. I didn't see it at first, but sure the fuck enough, there's an arrow pointing at her pussy. Why was this included? Who designed this? I cannot unsee this now, and unfortunately, since my eyes have been tainted, so must yours. Miranda's pussy arrow will forever be burned into my memory. Fuck, now I have a fetish for Miranda Keys. Fuck.
I think I speak for all Springfielders when I say, where is the sexy footage?
On Floodgate, there's a missing persons flyer on the ground. The missing person in question is Jason Jones, the same absolute barbarian that made the 2D shirtless model of himself and hid it by the final terminal on Halo. I'm just going to call it like I'm seeing it. This Marine is suicidal. He cries out in agony, proclaiming that he watched his entire squad get eaten and transformed by the flood. He has an animation cycle where he holds the gun to his head, but never goes through with pulling the trigger. Sometimes the game will glitch and the Marine will have nothing in his hand and his pistol will be on his hip. You can make him combat ready by damaging him without killing him, or if you leave him be and return after the Shadow of Intent cutscene, he will either be dead or gone altogether. Assumingly, he goes through with it, and the Flood come to feast on his remains.
Guilty! Sergeant, they were all infected! I can see it crawling, sliding around beneath their skin! Oh! And then they got up, started to talk! Oh God! Their voices! Oh God!
Yeah, you heard that right. There are legitimately ghosts in Halo, with little explanation as to how they work, why they appear, and what they even are. All information provided about these ghost sightings come from speculation alone with minimal evidence. The primary theory that I have seen is that Bungie was planning on adding Spartan bots to multiplayer, and that some bots were specific to certain multiplayer maps. By overloading the map with players, items, and explosions, the game can glitch and spawn in one of these unfinished bots. Another theory is that through high latency and connection issues, a player can join into a game as a ghost, making them invulnerable to damage, but still perfectly capable of damaging other enemies. They do not appear on the scoreboard, do not have a gamer tag above their heads, and their kills are credited to the Guardians. Maybe what I said about vengeful and adaptive code really does have some truth after all, as, like I said, these ghost sightings are few and far between, but some are concretely real with existing, unexplainable footage of the encounters. This is where we get really deep. This one dates back all the way to 1999, before Combat Evolved was even released. Cortana sent multiple emails to a popular fan site, Marathon, that gave some insights into the game and her character, although her character was very much altered by the time Halo CE was released. In these letters, she outright states that she doesn't like being cramped and confined in Chief's suit and feels limited in her abilities because of human technology. She mentions that retribution will be swift and that there will be fire and brimstone in the humans' future. This, of course, is not Cortana's actual feelings, but it's wild to think that there was this secret promotional material floating around before Halo was even a thing. I could only imagine being on the receiving end of these emails. I'd shit myself if a super advanced AI started sending me poems and letters, then threatening to destroy all human life because we plucked her from her home and locked her in a cage. There's an 8th letter that was discovered in version 1.3 of Myth, The Fallen Lords, another Bungie game. Halo 2 also had a weird promotional gimmick in the form of an ARG, or alternative reality game, where players had to interact with the real world and a handful of fake websites to ultimately be invited to a secret party for Halo 2, where the most dedicated of fans got to play the game early and meet with some developers of the game. I highly suggest watching Rocket Sloth's video on this, as the I Love Bees rabbit hole goes deep. The last and most cryptic secret message is from the Forerunner AI Adjutant Reflex, which made frequent forum posts onto Halo.net months before the release of Halo 3. Throughout the month of June, this strange user would post cryptic messages depicting the end of all things and mentioning a great journey in order to achieve victory. What is mainly remembered regarding AR is the strange poem that was posted on Bungie.net, and I have the picture of this message on screen. It is widely speculated that AR is the monitor of a Halo ring and is sending us messages warning us of the incoming threat of the Flood and that the rings need to be activated. Close to the end of June, a post was made stating that AR had been terminated and that a new, now malicious entity had taken over, simply called New AR or NAR. This has to be depicting the Flood taking over a Halo ring and thus taking over the Monitor. Could it be that AR is the Monitor from Halo 2? We see that Gravemind integrates that Monitor into his hive mind and saps its information, so perhaps after AR is terminated and replaced with NAR, we go from communicating with the Monitor of an installation to communicating with the Gravemind himself. Now that's a terrifying thought.
Much talk, and I have listened through rock and metal and time. Now I shall talk, and you shall listen.
That's all, folks.
Halo 3 was monumental and touched the hearts of many, not only because it was the final chapter for the Chief, but also because it wrapped up the story in a crowd-pleasing and exciting way. There were many twists that bolstered the story and shocked many, like the Chief and the Arbiter fighting alongside one another throughout the entire game, the Flood invading Earth, Truth needing a human to activate the rings and thus begin the Great Journey, which is a secret that he kept from the rest of the Covenant. The reveal of the Halo Ring in progress, the definitive defeat of the Flood, and the end of the Human Covenant War, which ultimately gave humanity a powerful ally in the elites. Not only that, but the story had major stakes throughout. If Truth had activated the rings, not only would humanity be wiped out, which had already been threatened for many years during the Human Covenant War, but the elites, the Flood, the brutes, grunts, jackals, Letgolo, everything with a heartbeat in the known universe would cease to be.
If he succeeds, humanity, the Covenant, every sentient being in the galaxy.
The rings will kill us all.
And lastly, Halo 3 bowed out a handful of iconic characters that had been present in the story and helped Chief along throughout the conflict. Miranda Keyes, daughter of Captain Keyes, who ultimately succumbed to the Flood in Halo CE, would be impaled by spiker rounds fired from the Prophet of Truth himself. 343 Guilty Spark would show his true nature for the last time by betraying Chief once again and mortally wounding Sergeant Johnson in the process, which was foreshadowed during the arc. Chief would then have his revenge and destroy that little floating ball of garbage, followed by a second Halo ring, truly bringing the game full circle and closing out a beautiful trilogy.
We'll head for the portal, and we'll all go home.
10 years later, it is difficult not only for games to have a cohesive story that builds on itself over time and then knows when to close the storybook, but in all other forms of media too. Too often do we see good origin movies and terrible sequels, bad spin-offs of popular TV shows, or even more recently, terrible, unnecessary, and butchered reboots. Halo 3 nailed a trilogy and developed an incredible universe of diverse and interesting characters which have stood up to the test of time. Rather than focus on a pushy agenda, these games built upon the previous entries and developed these characters, fleshing them out and giving them more distinct personalities, teaching not only the characters, but the players many lessons as well. The top two lessons from Halo 3 specifically being, despite traumatic and hostile pasts, we can set aside our differences to overcome a common evil, and
Don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it.
You know me when I make a promise.
You keep it. I do know how to pick 'em.
not only that, but the rest of the game outside the story elevated this game from great to timeless. Custom games brought new friends together for game nights. Forge kept creative young minds busy and allowed us to build whatever our hearts desired, whether that be multiplayer maps, race tracks, Rube Goldbergs, or party games. And multiplayer was the best of the best, where we all sweat out the dog days on Team Slayer, CTF, Oddball, and Big Team Battle. It also brought us all together. Halo 3 boasting one of the largest player bases in history and connecting us to one another through the newly revamped Xbox Live, which merged gaming with socializing. Halo 3 changed the world, the same way that Halo CE and Halo 2 did years prior. The hype for Halo 3 was palpable, and it delivered on every front, sending the series out. I remember when this game came out. I remember unwrapping the Halo 3 Xbox 360 bundle for Christmas 13 years ago in 2007. I remember finishing the fight for the first time, going back on Legendary for seconds, then going Easter egg achievement and skulls hunting for my just desserts. I remember having friends over and staying up all night playing multiplayer and custom games together. I remember spending countless hours making racetracks on Sandbox and rising through the ranks of multiplayer. All of these pivotal and character-building memories came from a video game, a medium of storytelling and entertainment that still gets shit to this day because people don't understand its potential. But we remember how great these times were. We remember how Halo 3 and games like it shaped who we are today. We remember the glory days and the fun times. We remember the story of the Chief and becoming
the protectors of Earth and all her colonies.
And now as we become adults and can only revisit the glory days in our minds, it is important that we never forget. And with that, it goes without saying that Halo Infinite has some big shoes to fill. It has been 5 years since a mainline game has been added to the franchise, which is the longest gap in Halo releases ever. It has been 19 years since the first Halo game released, and it has been 13 years since Halo 3. In that time, a generation of people have grown up with the game and are now adults, eagerly awaiting their escapes from reality and to get back into those 1,000-pound shoes of the Chief. So for me personally, there's a lot riding on Halo Infinite. I couldn't even begin to explain how much I lust to be blown away and to feel like a kid again. I want this game to recapture my childhood and be lightning in a bottle, a special and replayable experience for years and years to come. This series means a lot to me, which many of you have recognized and relate to, and like I said, I need an escape from reality and an escape from the daily struggles of life.
Were it so easy.
I can't speak for the lives of those on the other end of this screen, but since the release of the first Halo game, my life has been turbulent, to put it lightly. I made it through 12 years of schooling, plus 4 years of college, experienced a handful of loves, losses, and heartbreaks, peak highs with big wins, and dark valley lows with mental struggles and bouts of depression. I've aged, become an adult, and have undertaken adult responsibilities out of necessity rather than choice. I watched many friends go their separate ways, disconnecting from the group entirely. Some have succeeded and escaped their childhood hells. Others have turned to drugs and alcohol, their bodies ruined forever. Others still have stagnated, their career peaks being dead-end jobs, and some are outright dead. Gone from the earth, but not my mind. I've buried good people and animals that I will miss forever, and I myself have knocked on death's door, but thankfully he didn't answer.
Were it so easy.
Thanks for watching. I've got a Halo Reach retrospective in the works, and it's going to be a big one. We're going to go through level by level and analyze the characters, the scenario, and some of the deeper meanings within the game. We're going to get metaphorical, we're going to get metaphysical, we're going to go deep, and that might spiral into a retrospective for all of Bungie's Halos. So we would cover after Reach 1, 2, 3, ODST, and maybe Halo Wars. But after Halo Reach, I might want to take a step back and focus on other projects, because I do enjoy variety in my gaming, and I enjoy a wide variety of games. So we'll see if I do a little bit of burnout on Halo Reach and sink some time into Halo Infinite, and maybe want to focus on another release, maybe something bad again. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'll pick up the Avengers or actually purchase The Last of Us 2 and make a more cohesive and long rant about why those games are unnecessary and failures. Or we'll dive into Cyberpunk 2077 and see if it's worth the hype. I mean, I don't know yet. I really don't know yet. But all I know is that I really want to share this Halo Reach retrospective with you all, and that diving down the rabbit hole of Halo 3 has been a beautiful experience, and I hope that you all have enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more. Currently, the best way to support me is with a subscription, and despite YouTube rolling out some changes to the platform in regards to advertisements, I'm going to do everything in my power to keep this channel ad-free. The furthest I will go in terms of monetizing my content will be to accept donations and Patreon subscriptions if I do ever start to stream, and if the channel does start to blow up. But regardless, you all are beautiful people. Have a great night, day, whatever time it is in the world for you. Have a good one, and stay tuned for more. Peace.
But you did it. Truth and the Covenant, the Flood, it's finished.
It's finished.
I'll drop a beacon, but it'll be a while before anyone finds us. Years, even. I miss you.
Wake me when you need me.